Okay, proceed, please.
I think research is a process in which we collect, analyze, interpret data in order to understand the underlying principle. Principle is not a good word. I think like situation or phenomenon, something like that. That's how I would think as research.
Okay, thank you so much. Anyone else with any other opinion?
Well, thank you, Madam. This is Winnie.
Yes, Winnie.
I want to look at it in a way that by the time I do a research, there must be a problem that I have at hand. And so I need to get a solution. Let's say there are underlying problems that we are faced with and we need to get solution. And in doing that, I go into research and then out of that, a solution can be got. I think that is my simple way of explaining it.
Okay, thank you so much, Winnie. I like the way you've put it. There must be a problem. That is one, and then we are trying to look for a solution. And Winnie, just also to maybe to add on to your thought, sometimes we assume that research is supposed to find solutions, and the answer could be yes and no. Sometimes it's not necessarily finding a solution, but it is finding an answer. So let me give you an example. Maybe the first time when COVID-19 came, or the symptoms, the ailments, the pandemic, when it started, maybe the first question was, what is causing this illness? What is causing this? And the question was answered, COVID-19. How is it spread? And then it was answered through this. So sometimes the solution, I want to put solution in quotes. I would say in quotes, the solution may not, in research, the solution in research is actually simply finding answers to a question that is whose answers are not known. So Winnie, and for the rest of the class, maybe just to point out that the solutions that sometimes we refer to in research are not the solutions we normally are looking for. So the research problem, I like to emphasize the word research. The research problem usually sometimes is posed in a way that it doesn't seek for the solution that is normally, or the answer that is normally expected in everyday problems. Okay, I don't know if that makes sense, but we can discuss it further if you wish, but we may be able to see it later on if it's not clear now. Any other comments or question on what research may be?
Yes, madam. And I think building on your response and that of Winnie, I would say that it is systematic. The questions are systematic because as we do the research, we investigate, but guided by the questions we have asked to gather information and then study that information and come up with a conclusion. So we don't just simple research, but we are driven towards the same direction guided by the questions we are asking, so that we get an answer.
Okay, thank you, Arthur. You've brought another aspect. So the first one was on data collection. The second from Winnie was on a problem. And from Arthur, it is that we are driven by questions. Yeah, so systematically we answer those questions. So at the end of the day, we should have an answer for a certain research problem. Okay, Arthur, thank you so much. I am really liking the responses here. Do we have any other thoughts on research?
Yes, yes, madam. I don't know if everyone can hear me well.
Yes, we can. At least for me, I'm hearing you loud and clear, Benson.
Okay, my name is Benson Musinguzi, and I'm glad to be part of the class. Also, to add on what I understand research to be, well, I understand research to be something that I'm going to derive from the word itself, then search. I divided that into two words, meaning again, then search. So the whole thing now becomes to search again. What are we searching for? We are searching for knowledge about a phenomena using the systematic procedures. And then after doing that research, and then we put the findings on paper for future reference. As brief as that, madam.
Thank you so much, Benson. You've brought in another aspect, the and search. Yeah. So what Benson brings out is extremely important. Why? Your research is based on what others have done. You are building onto. Okay. So you're building onto something that is already, most of the time, is already being studied, but what you're building onto is an area which is either very little is known, you want to add, and or there is nothing known about that particular area which other people have been researching and you want to build on. So it's always based on other people's research. So one of the key things in research is you are building on literature from, you're basically you are searching from what others are doing. Okay, do we have any other?
Yes, doctor.
Yes, please.
Yes. My name is David Mac. But mine would be a question, like how do we term the aspect of research? How do we term like a predictions or forecasts? How do we bring that into the concept of research?
How do we, sorry, I'm not hearing you clearly.
Am I clear now?
Yes, you're clear, a little bit low, but you are clear.
I was asking, where do we place the concept of predictions and forecasts when we're dealing with the research?
Predictions and forecasts. So when do we predict? When do we forecast? Meaning, when do we put forward presumptions which probably we are going to test? Okay? Presumptions or certain predictions, like what in other terms, in technical terms, may be referred to as hypothesis. Where do we place those ones? Okay? And probably for me, what I would say to you, Benson, is we are then categorizing on the particular type of research that we are focusing on. The particular type of research that we would like to focus on. So David, I would say, rather than, so that we don't confuse others, we are going to look at things like quantitative research, qualitative, mixed methods. The approach, the kind of question we are asking, or the kind of question we are posing for certain people, for a research community, that will determine if there is a prediction or not. Okay? So in other words, David, there's some research where you go, where the researcher is simply going to explore, meaning there is very little very little known about a particular area. And therefore, because there's little known, there is need for in-depth study, and one cannot make a prediction. For example, one cannot make a prediction on how on how a certain phenomena will behave. But then there's some research where one can make a pretty clear prediction. Okay, very, very clear prediction. So with that, the person can put forward assumptions and predictions and test them out. So that's where we identify something either being quantitative or what kind of research are we going to do. That's where I would put forward a kind of research where we can make a prediction or an assumption clearly. There are those research types where you can't make a prediction per se, where something is relatively new. So let me give you an example, David. The researchers who in 2019, when COVID first came on the scene, no prediction could be made about what is it that, for example, the first time people presented symptoms, I'm sure they didn't know if this is a bacteria or a virus. Yeah, until they discovered it was actually a virus. Then afterwards, they couldn't tell its behavior. Yeah, they couldn't predict its behavior because it was relatively unknown. But right now, any researcher who is looking at COVID-19, because there's been so much research done about it, they probably have hypotheses about how it will behave. So take an example, if a new strain developed and they wanted to predict its behavior, so for example, in terms of its spread and how quickly its gestation period from the time of infection to then showing symptoms, they can't make a prediction because the other strains have demonstrated a certain pattern. So predictions can be made right now. But in 2019, those predictions and assumptions couldn't be made because it was a relatively unknown virus. So David, I don't know if I've answered something.
Yes, please, doctor.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, doctor.
Good afternoon, Patience.
Yes, to add on about the question which Dave asked, mine was we discuss some topics in research, like you'll be having like a performance gaps in, like, for example, like in data analysis, then you have an action plan to improve your performance gaps, like the way how doctor have explained research definition, which is a systematic process of inquiry aimed at discovering or interpreting facts and theories. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Patience. Thank you so much for that. She has brought in another aspect of data analysis. I think the first person, I think it was, I don't remember who it was, who talked about data collection. And so once data is collected, it must be taken through analysis so that meaning can be brought out of it. Once data is collected, that's what it is, data, but meaning must be derived out of it to discover those answers that we were, for the questions we were asking about, to come up with what the answer could be to the question. So there is the aspect of data analysis, and data analysis itself also has a scientific process, a procedure, a systematic procedure that must be followed, so that you can have an objective analysis or a clear path of analysis where you derive an objective answer to the question that you are answering, that you are supposed to answer. So Patience, thank you for bringing the aspect of analysis.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Do we have any other opinion, question?
Yes, doctor, but I think you've partially answered. I put in the chat on what happens if information is limited, but I think you've hit on it partially when you were answering the first question.
Okay, thank you so much, Arthur. Let me see if there are any other questions. We've answered, yeah, okay, so that is okay. So with that, like, I think we can begin. We can begin our class, our introduction, and we have the most basic question: what is research? And I think from this group, there are those who have a very, very clear understanding of what research is. But however, let's not make assumptions. So we've had terms like systematic inquiry. Okay, we've had the term systematic inquiry. So if we look at the first term inquiry, we're asking a question is being raised. So we've had terms like there's a research problem and there are questions that need an answer. We need to answer a question, a research question. So that's what the inquiry means. Systematic, I think Patience brought it out very well. You must have a very clear procedure about what it is you're going to tackle, why you're going to tackle it, why is it so important this area be tackled. And if you answer that question, you tackle this research gap, who does it benefit? Why is it of benefit? And with that, for you to begin to give that systematic answer, you're answering to a certain research community that has a burning question that hasn't been answered. Okay? A burning question that hasn't been answered. I think one person, I don't remember if it was Benson, who talked about research. Meaning means we are going back to searching something that has been searched by others, that has been talked about others. I think others have pointed it out that this area has not been clearly answered. And that's where the systematic part. We normally start with a systematic inquiry into past research that has been done on a particular area. So that's where you hear people talk about literature review. Yeah. A certain research community has been researching on this, they've reported on this, but they're also saying we have missed out this part has not been answered. So that part that gap which hasn't been answered is the one we are trying to tackle. We are trying to identify and then raise a question out of it. Yeah. So once we make this inquiry, we report about it. Yeah. We report about it. And we specifically also report on the research methods we have used. That is the systematic inquiry. So the research method is what gives it the science, the scientific systematic inquiry. Yeah. So once we make that inquiry, we report on what we're reporting on is the outcomes. So that then others should access these outcomes. So note these key terms, systematic inquiry, which is reported on based on research methods, and the outcomes are then made accessible to others, meaning we report, we publish. Okay? We report, we publish. Now, this is quite a key point, and in Africa, it kind of remains a little bit ambiguous. Why? Because we rarely make our research accessible to others, or in other words, we rarely publish our work. Okay? We rarely publish our work. Why? The $1 million question is why? The answers to that are many. We have the political answers, we have the very straightforward answers, we have all the reasons for not publishing. But essentially, when we are carrying out research, any research, whether especially at masters upwards, masters onwards, the research should be bringing forward new knowledge. Okay? New knowledge. This is why we make it accessible to others. We are bringing forward new knowledge. What do we mean? What do we mean when we say we're bringing forward new knowledge? I want to go back to, I think, Benson's contribution when he talked about re and search. Re and search. We start with what others have published. Others are saying, for example, someone publishes on AI in the education sector, Or maybe someone wants to research on AI in the education sector. And maybe the person wants to narrow it further down to application of AI in the education sector. And the person tries to find out what people have published on application of AI. The person begins to look on what has been published on that particular area. What has been published? And then maybe discovers, maybe most articles have been looking at support of students, what tools are being used by AI or by the education sector to support student teaching and learning. And they look at application, what has been applied, and in which areas. Is it at coursework level? Is it in problem solving? Where has AI been applied? And then they maybe report on perception, on the effect. And the person is reading all these articles in that area, but maybe discovers that all these articles maybe took a qualitative approach. That means they carried out maybe group discussions with people, with users of AI or students of AI, to discover on where it has been applied and the effect for them on their perspective. They maybe had interviews with lecturers, and they also gave their perspective. So it was very much a qualitative approach where people are getting the perception of application and effect. Application and effect. And somebody says, no, why don't I take a quantitative approach? Why don't I take a quantitative approach that actually measures effect? Okay? That actually measures effect. And maybe the person uses a certain theory that can measure impact and effect, which can actually make predictions and to give a perspective on how much impact and effect that AI has had on maybe coursework completion, maybe on knowledge retention, all those things. The person looks for a theory, identifies, and says, I'm going to use a quantitative approach rather than qualitative, okay? So that one, because it is covering a wider base, brings another perspective to that. This person is bringing new knowledge in terms of now numbers. Whereas the qualitative approach, the person was looking at a smaller group, the publications were looking at a smaller group. And this now, the person who says, I want to do research on a larger scale, make it quantitative in nature, and actually have predictions to measure, not just the perceptions of a few, but actually have an actual impact and measurement scale. And the person publishes. That one, that is adding new knowledge where there's something measurable, where someone can say, where application was made, maybe there was a 30% increment in coursework completion. On retention, on knowledge acquisition and retention, maybe the person says there's only a 2% increment. Or even another person finds there was actually a decrement in knowledge retention. Maybe that will be their response. So it just stops from the perspective of a few, but the perspective of many, but not just perspective, but actually measuring on impact. So that brings a new knowledge on impact and effect in terms of measurement. It becomes a completely new knowledge. And that is then made accessible. It is published and made accessible to others. So that's a very elaborate example. I don't know if it has confused you more, but that would be from the research this person would have done. An inquiry would have been made like, okay, people have talked about impact. They have said this and that, but what is the actual impact That would be the research question. What is the actual impact? Something measurable, not just perspective, but something measurable. But this question would have been raised from past research, that research. From other research, we see this gap. Yeah, we see this gap. We have some people who actually publish, and they say, they actually in their publication say, this research covered this and this, but this area has not been covered. That also is another way we identify where we should make our next inquiry, probably where we can identify our next research problem. So that is what I can say about that. So research, we move further, looks at seeking solutions to problems or answers to meaningful questions. Now, here, note the way this is phrased, concerned with seeking solutions or answers to meaningful questions. So I think Winifred talked about seeking solutions to problems. Now here, this is where, and we want to be very careful. In research, it's also important to note that even a negative answer is an answer. Okay? A negative answer is an answer and is also publishable. I don't know if I'm getting this point across. Even a negative answer is an answer. Okay?
For as long as it's meaningful.
Exactly. For as long as it is meaningful, even a negative answer is an answer. So it's not expected when you do research, we are supposed to have correct. Everything is right. No. The negative answer lets the researcher, other researchers know, don't take this path. It doesn't resolve the research question. So look to another perspective. So it's also an answer, and it's valid, and it is okay. Okay? So that meaningful, we come to the issue of research question. Meaningful questions are expressed. A meaningful question, meaning it deserves an answer, whether negative or positive. Whether the answer is negative or positive, it deserves an answer. But this is everyday life. This is everyday life. I mean, if I went to the hospital, I'm not feeling well, I present symptoms of let's say joint aches, and I'm feverish, and they test me and they find I don't have malaria. That's a meaningful answer, because it demonstrates that I don't have the malaria virus. Therefore, I must have something else that is causing joint aches and fevers. So it then drives the doctor or the lab technician to say, let's look for X, Y, and Z. Since this other thing is not there, let's look for this, and this. It may drive them to say, let's look for typhoid, let's look for maybe a bacterial infection. So it should be a meaningful question that demands an answer. Now, formulation, first of all, identification of a research problem is always one of those things that is quite daunting for any research student and any researcher for that matter. But the important thing, the process of collecting it is what we should focus on. The process of identification, meaning doing a thorough literature review. There are people who actually go through a systematic literature review. Talking to people who are actively in research in that particular area can help to narrow down, or can help to guide you on how to clearly identify the research problem, and then formulate a meaningful question out of it. Now, what is a non-meaningful research question? Take an example, questions that are not answerable as a result of an inquiry alone. Let me give you and especially answer questions that are biased. Yeah, I'll give you I just had a thought. There was one time that time I was a PhD candidate, so I was also one of the students, should I say, in that class. So there was, I remember there was a gentleman who presented his research to a panel of researchers. And his particular research question was, he wanted to prove that civilization began from Africa through oral history. Okay? Through oral history, meaning he was going to rely on the storytelling culture of African communities to determine the origins of civilization. Now, depending on whose perspective, but I think also from my perspective, how meaningful is that question? I mean, any community, especially a community that that still relies on oral history, will believe this civilization began with them. Any community, I think, I've not yet proved that, but I think any community that is especially still reliant on oral history may believe civilization began with them. Right now, we have, take an example, we have technology which can identify your ancestry, where your origins came from. You now hear, especially in Europe and in the US, people who test their ancestry, and you find people say, "Oh, I find my ancestors began from Ghana." So others will say, my ancestors are from South Africa, and so on and so forth. And yet, the person maybe right now is in Denmark or Iceland or somewhere else, but you see their origins are elsewhere, just by using DNA. Now, if scientific research can do that, one would question the point of using oral history to identify the origins of civilization. That oral history, you imagine the scope of where this person got it from. And the fact that it is oral means that it becomes very difficult to identify the origins of that story. Okay? What are the origins of that story? How authentic are the origins of that story? Those are question marks. That is maybe one thing I can give the meaningfulness of a question. And then let's now talk to the part of bias. So I remember this gentleman when he presented. This gentleman, his names were clearly African. That was one, but his accent told you that he lived probably a significant part of his life in the United States of America. His accent told you that. So I remember the panelists telling him, to who is this research question? Of what significance is it to the research world? Because they said on this panel, it looks like this research question is simply there to validate the significance of the Black race, specifically the Black race in America. And even he himself, as he presented, they were telling him clearly, you have a bias, because he was even making statements like, these white people undermine us. So is is this a research, truly a scientific research, or a validation of my significance as a Black person? So therefore, it begs the question, is that meaningful to research? Is it meaningful? So take an example. Maybe Sheba right now is depressed, and I may therefore go on a quest to validate myself and talk about myself and how great I am, how great my family is. And in my mind, I might actually create a grandiose imagery of my ancestry, simply to give meaning to Sheba, because at this very moment, I'm not feeling very good about myself. Maybe I perceive certain people don't like me. I perceive there's a certain group of people who don't like me. So I may decide to create a validate myself. So that is for me one of the things I would point out as the difference between a meaningful research question and a non-meaningful research question, because a non-meaningful research question may not be answerable as a result of the inquiry alone. Okay? So an example is if we're looking at judgment, something that is judgmental, my perspective, I'm looking at oral history. Then we have metaphysical questions. Why do I exist? Why do I exist? What is the purpose of my existence on this earth? That is, it's a personal question, but it gives an answer to me as Sheba, but it is not meaningful to a research community. So this is where it is very, very significant, very, very significant that you are answering a research question that is meaningful to a research community. Okay? Meaningful to a research community. This is very, very significant. That's where the re and search comes from. You are searching, you are researching on something that is already being studied by a certain group of people. Another, maybe this may be completely may not may seem unapplicable, but let us say Sheba says, I am going to embark on a study that is going to find out the distance between the Earth and the Moon. Now, the first question is, are you sure this is not known? Maybe Sheba doesn't know, but others do know. Maybe it has already been published, it has already been researched about, and we already know the actual distance between the Earth and the Moon. So the question is, why are you doing it? Is it for your own sake? So in other words, that question is non-meaningful. I don't know if we are together on this.
Hello. Doctor, I just wanted to
Brian.
let you know that the insightful comments on chat, and also maybe to speak to your last submission where you're saying in situations where you want to research on something that has already been researched by others. I look at an example. Let's look at a work environment. From the IT perspective, you find you have knowledge over something. If, for example, we look at Windows as an operating system, I have read so much that I know how to manipulate or navigate through the Windows operating system. And now the team that I'm seated with has less knowledge. So I am using on the already existing research to impart knowledge that I know to others. So yes, I'm sharing the knowledge that or the research that I've made, though not my own research, to others that don't know about it. Isn't that research?
Okay, so let me get this. You want to impart knowledge on that you know to a group of people who don't know. Dennis, is this right?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, that's it. But still, I acquired that knowledge through research.
Yes. I think what here you're doing is you're teaching. Okay, Dennis. So take an example. If I went and read from some books what research is, and I came here and I put this knowledge together and I began to teach you, maybe you don't know what research is. So what I'm doing there is teaching. Research, research is we are making a contribution to a community of researchers. A community of researchers. Let me give you an example. I'll give you an example of my research, okay? So my research was in the field of mHealth. And at the time of that research, all publications were talking about the unsustainability of mHealth projects, meaning in the field of healthcare, we had mHealth applications that were being designed left, right, and center. They were being implemented, but their lifespan was short, especially after the donor, the initiator of the project, pulls out of the project. That project, most of the time, would die a natural death. So the questions were, there were questions, why are these applications dying out? And there were some suggestions, but they were never tested. So some suggestions were that, one, these applications are being designed and implemented based on hype. Hype meaning they were saying, the minute we apply this, it's going to bring an automatic improvement. It's going to bring this social improvement. But without applying any scientific method, meaning to rigorously evaluate, is this thing viable or not? That was one. Two, they were also saying that literature was saying that from all intents and purposes, these applications were being designed by people from a developed perspective, and they were being designed for a developing perspective. A developing perspective. So now the person who is designing has no knowledge of the developing perspective. So they were saying we really need to apply the developing perspective in the design process. So these were two propositions that were being put forward, but no one had done it yet. Okay? Two propositions from literature. Apply rigorous evaluation, and to apply a development perspective. Two propositions. So my research said, okay, why don't I apply these two and give an answer? Okay, let me apply these two and give an answer. And the objective was to give a greater understanding of the developing context on what works, what does not work in a developing perspective. To give a greater understanding of what works and what does not work. So, Dennis, if you look at that, what the questions that were being that were asking were things that that research community of mHealth did not have. And that's why they were bringing them forward saying, we haven't seen this being done. We haven't seen this being done. So that research community then benefits from my research. Because they have already done research on this, this, and this, but they were saying what we haven't seen in this community is rigorous evaluation, one, and two, application of a development perspective. So those were two things that the research community of mHealth from publication. So you see, Dennis, where we talk about research, you look at what has been published and what they point out has not been done. Dennis, I don't know if I answer your question.
Yes, you do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Brian, you had a question or comment?
Greetings. Good evening, Doctor. I think I just had posted my question in the chat right there, and there may have been another question. But I was asking that if research is to answer problems, where does that leave, for example, philosophical research? Are we restricting it to strictly research that has applicability? Because if we look at the fact that human beings have the capacity to seek knowledge for its intrinsic value, does that strictly, or does that by definition mean that the research such as in epistemology or in abstract topics cannot be considered as such?
I think, Brian, you ask a very, very, very good question. Now we are moving into types of research. Definitely philosophical questions are part and parcel of research. Definitely. If we're in the introduction, we are going to look at types of research, okay? Types of research. So there's what we call basic research, and that's where philosophical research comes in. So that research is definitely valid, definitely valid. The only reason why the only primary reason I've focused the answers on based on I mean my examples based on what type of research we call this applicable research is because that's the kind of research most of us are going to be dealing with in this module and at the end of this at the end of your program. That's why I focus on it's called, sorry, the word escapes my head. The word escapes me, but basically applicable research. That's why I focus on that. But definitely philosophical research is part and parcel of research. It doesn't nullify it in any way.
Yes, Doctor.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Yes, Moses?
Yes, thank you, Doctor, for this submission. You said somewhere that research should be aimed to benefit the research community.
Yes,
but
please.
you talk about maybe about the research that we do mostly, mainly in IT, where at the end of it, we develop a system or an application that is going to help the people who are outside the research community. Maybe talk about that and I see.
Okay. Moses, thank you. That's a very, very good question. Most of us come from an IT background, and we are, how can I put it? The perspective, we've begun our research journey by building systems. Okay, we began our research journey by building systems. So most of us started at undergraduate level by building a system, implementing it, and then reporting basically to a faculty. We don't necessarily report to a research community, but to a faculty. Now, most of this is what we've done at undergraduate level. And it introduces us to beginning of reporting. Now, when it comes to master's level, we go beyond, yeah, Moses, we go beyond the system. Okay? We go beyond the system. We are now not focused on your skill, your programming skill. No. We are now focused on your research skill. The objective, your research skill, not your programming skill. So what do I mean? To take an example, your research involves developing an artifact. Oh, and by the way, it's not also ICT students can develop artifacts. Sometimes they just happen to be models or frameworks, not necessarily systems. So the artifact for an IS student may be an application, a system, and so on and so forth. Now, the objective is not building the system, no. The objective of building the system is to answer a question, okay? The objective is to answer a question. So take an example. Let us say, let me go to a topic which, an area which I know a little bit about, not much, healthcare. And you now have systems being set up in healthcare with the main objective of one, improving reporting, two, improving healthcare service delivery, and maybe improving efficiency, whatever it is, all these things are being done. And you know, and a lot of literature has come out, and maybe someone goes to that literature and there are all these propositions saying healthcare is with implementation of information systems, with digital systems, we expect to see improved reporting, improved this, improved that. And then a person says, Moses says, okay, all these literatures points out this. I want to find out if application of an IS actually does improve reporting in a particular context or contexts. And Moses goes ahead, designs and implements, but with the primary objective at the end of evaluating to see if there's improved reporting and efficiency. So what he's reporting at the end, if it does actually bring about improved reporting and even at the end, Moses might say, I implemented, but in reality, it didn't bring about improved. Sorry, just give me a minute. I plug in. Please give me a minute. Okay, sorry about that. So Moses, essentially, what we would be seeing is what we'd expect, the question we expect you to answer is based on other research, all these assumptions being made that implementing my research may be proved, no, it is true, or yes, it does to an extent, but because of hindrances X, Y, and Z. So that would be the answer you're giving us, Moses. So that is the answer you're giving to the research community, which is putting forward all these propositions. Do I answer your question, Moses?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, but that was a very, very good question, Moses. Thank you for that. This is something that you will see coming up time and again, especially as you begin doing your dissertations. So let's move on.
Doctor,
Madam,
I have
Yes, please. Yes, Abu Bekar.
so for me, I happen to have a lot of friends, like you said, in M Health. I wanted to know if you could be kind enough to sneak peek us on what did you find? Why weren't M Health applications working?
Okay. So that's I think that's a good question. And also just want to add that a student of mine did research and built on my research just in this year's he has just defended. I think he defended last weekend, and his research has gone to, so he has built on my research. But just to give you a sneak peek, my research was rural based. Okay, so it was really rural. I used rural development theory. That's where I brought in the development perspective. And one of the shocking things, I mean, just to let you know how much a designer from a developed perspective. Now imagine me, I'm from a Ugandan, but I am city born and bred. So there are things which I may not be, that are simply unknown to me. So one of the things that was a shocker to me at that time was that mobile literacy was actually very limited at that time amongst mobile phone users. Okay.
Yes.
So I remember my research was qualitative. I spent about 2 years with a community, a healthcare community. So I was attached to a particular health facility where they would carry out trainings of community members and VHTs, village health teams. So I remember the first time we first started generically talking about all problems, development problems. So slowly we moved towards the application. And I remember one of the things I reported on, that there was an old man, an old gentleman, who raised his hand when we talked about the application. He said, "You people, thank you for bringing this thing, but me, I want to say, the only thing I know is how to make a call and how to receive a call. That's it." They actually didn't know how to use SMS. And the application that was being brought was the VHTs were supposed to be making weekly reports via SMS.
Yes.
So you can imagine,
Yes.
you can imagine we designed something in one context, but in the reality, some VHTs said we don't even know how to write an SMS. One of the tools I used, actually, we had those group discussions, I had interviews, I had the questionnaire, but I also, because this project, my research good enough came with another project, we actually had training sessions on how to use mobile phones. And I gave out an objective style question to all users, to all village community members. We actually we used the Nindia parish in Nkosi sub-county. So we went in this Nindia parish, we went to 12 villages, and we gave a test before the training and after the training. So that test was part of part of the results I presented, asking simple questions. How do I get to the SMS platform? How do I type questions like that? Just asking those objective style questions gave me a lot of data to determine on mobile literacy levels in the village at that time. What it is now, I don't know. Mobile literacy levels, I don't know what the situation is right now. But that was the situation at that, just to give you a perspective.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. So one key point was there another question from anyone?
Yes, doctor. There was one in the chat. I asked about bias. how would you separate yourself from the bias? Should you also study bias? If you're doing research, should you declare your bias? So that maybe as a way of like defense, not to be judged by that.
Okay.
And in place for bias.
Okay. Now, that's a very good question, Arthur. Very, very good question. Bias, the question of bias. Because remember, this is scientific, and scientific is supposed to be, by in its very nature, objective. But human beings, as we are not always objective. We have opinions, we have our own perspectives, and so on and so forth. Now, how do we avoid bias? One, I think for me, this is just from my experience. I'll give you from my experience. One, avoid a topic that has any personal, especially a very personal connection to you. This is what I mean. I gave you the example of the gentleman who wanted to do research to prove that civilization began from Africa. Clearly, he was a black man. Clearly, he was a black American. And clearly, as he was presenting, he was talking about these white people think they are more civilized than us. That already demonstrates a bias because there's a personal, there's something personal about it. A second example I can give you, in that same panel, there was a lady who presented her research. She wanted to do research on land ownership from the historical perspective of the historical perspective of the relationship between Buganda and Bunyoro. So those who are historians may know more than me. I also don't know much. I'm not very, very clear, but I think from the historical perspective, there was land that was given to Buganda as by the colonial rulers as a thank you for their support in suppressing or bringing down the Bunyoro kingdom. So there was that land that was given. So this lady was doing her research on that. So as she was presenting, it was clearly visible that she was emotionally attached to the subject. You could see the emotional reaction as she was presenting. So when she finished, the panelists, the researchers, they told her that they told her in the gentlest way possible, that perhaps you may want to pick another topic. Because they said it is clear you are emotionally attached to this topic. Okay? This, by the fact that you're emotionally attached, it's going to bias your analysis of data. It's automatically going to bias. So avoiding anything that where you are emotionally attached, that is one. However, even if you're not emotionally attached, we are human beings. And as human beings, we are automatically, we have our natural biases. So one, as a researcher, is to have a constant reminder to yourself. One of the things that may be, I can give you an example from my experience. I remember one incident. We were with a community of VHTs, Village Health Team. And we had just had a session on where we had asked the VHTs to give us a perspective on what they felt their needs are for them to do a better job. And of course, one of the main things they raised is they needed transportation, because one of their duties was to move from household to household, collecting healthcare information, and also bringing about awareness on healthcare issues. Other times, they were brought children, especially they were brought children to give first line of treatment and then refer. So they talked about the need for transportation. So they were asking for things like bicycles. So I remember at the end of one of these sessions, one of the people I was working with, one of the facilitators, came to me saying, "Look at this man." She pointed at one of the participants. He said, "Look at this man. He has a whole motorcycle, but he wants a bicycle." Can't he use his motorcycle? So this mentality of constantly begging. So of course I agreed with her, but as I was agreeing with her, I remembered I'm supposed to collect this data regardless of what I think and feel. Me as Sheba, I may feel this guy can use his motorcycle. But in reality, him as a participant, he has said, no, I can't use this thing alone. Him as a participant, he said, me, I need a bicycle. So Sheba's feelings are null and void. Okay? You, the researcher, report back exactly what the participant has said. And you say, perhaps this affects his or her work, their work as VHTs. Arthur, I don't know if I clarify.
Yes, doctor. Thank you so much. You have done it.
I have something to ask on that point, doctor.
Yes, please.
Doctor, I request that maybe you talk about this part. For example, if you do your research, you do data collection, you analyze data, and then your hypothesis test comes out to be negative. Does that mean that you have failed research? Because I believe that in academic research, some people, the findings that they report are somehow biased because they want to align themselves with their topic in order to pass the exam at the end of the course.
Okay. Now, Moses, the most important thing to remember is a negative answer in research is correct. Okay? A negative answer in research is correct. Unless it is your ego, which doesn't want to say that this hypothesis is actually wrong. But a negative answer in research is very correct, and you will still get your distinction 100%. Moses, I don't know if I answer you.
Yeah, you have answered me, doctor.
Okay. Okay. This slide is going to end with two words: positivism versus phenomenology. We're going to see this in detail on positivism and phenomenology. We're going to see this in detail. Think about it, go and read about it. We're definitely not going to cover everything now. I would like for you to go and look at those articles, but think about it. We're going to look at it in detail. The nature and methods of research. We need to know, we should be able to distinguish on what is research philosophy, the different approaches. Sorry, give me a minute. I had not put this phone on do not disturb. So the most important thing is some of the things we need to distinguish. Research philosophy, the differing approaches to research, the need for a clear strategy, multiple method approaches, credibility, and ethics of research. Those are the things we're going to focus on in our next lecture. Now, this is what I would suggest. Let us stop here for now. We've had something about research. These slides are up on Moodle, so you'll find them there. What I would suggest is formulate your groups, go to Moodle, and look at those articles. I've divided them between articles for ICT, articles for IS. I try to look for published articles in our areas in our program areas, okay? So that we already have a perspective of what kind of research is expected from us. So go ahead and look at those articles, okay? If I just open up Moodle now, I think I still have the page open. Let me first stop sharing. Okay, I hope you can see my screen.
Yes,
Yes,
doctor.
Doctor.
Okay, so from this, look at this first section. We have published articles for MSc ICT, published articles for MSc. These two folders contain 2 articles each. So download them. In your group, select the article you want to focus on, okay? So once you've selected that article you want to focus on, come to this assignment. First, this side. Hidden. You select an article of your choice. What do you think is the research area? What is the risk? There's the research area. Then what is the research problem or research question that the researchers are handling? What is the research method and approach of this article? So you're going to present this as a group and defend your perspective that I believe this is a research area. Why? What then the research problem, what is it that points it out that this is the research problem or the research question? Okay. What is the research method and approach of the article? So you're going to present this on the 6th of September. Okay. So I'm giving you tomorrow off. You take time to familiarize yourself with Moodle, with the article, and then formulate your groups and then tackle the question. Is that okay?
Yes, doctor.
Okay.
You're loud and clear, doctor.
Okay. So I'm just going to send to Dennis the enrollment key plus the link to this module, so that you can easily search for this this module. My first question, by the way, is: do you have access to Moodle?
Me, I don't.
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
No, we don't.
Not yet. Do you have access to the ICT department?
Not yet.
Doctor, we haven't
Yes, we can.
gotten any access.
They have promised us.
So
Sorry, they've promised you, eh?
Then it's kindly, doctor.
Okay. Okay. So if you can kindly let them know that our lecturer has already given us an assignment, if they could do this promptly, it would be helpful, yeah?
Okay.
Doctor, quick one.
Pardon?
Maybe a quick one.
Sorry, which
Maybe
one?
a quick one.
Yes, please.
Yes, maybe talk about the nature and the format of the exam, because it's only a month away. We have to begin prepare as early as possible. How is the nature of the exam that we do? What should we expect? The structure, something like that.
Okay. Normally I give, unless that the faculty tells me otherwise, but normally I give a take home, a concept paper. Is that understood?
Hi, how are you?
Yes,
Doctor, we also would like to know how many group members are we supposed to be?
Okay. Now I'm seeing actually 24 members, so I think we're actually more than what I thought. Eh? So if we're 24, you take me out 23. If we could have maybe groups of 5, it could be groups of 4 and between groups of 4 and 5. Eh? Or groups of 4.
Doctor, I have a question.
Yes, please.
May I would like to understand your availability outside Friday and Saturday, just should any one of us has a question that they feel they need your guidance.
Okay.
And two, regarding this assignment, yes, I see everything has been uploaded on Moodle, but we also need to upload our coursework on,
Yes,
on the
please.
same platform. We'll have
Yes, please.
a presentation.
Yeah, yes, please. You also do the Moodle gives you it requires you to upload assignments. So some assignments are uploadable. Others I can actually even put up a quiz, and you do it online. The final assessment, if it's still allowed that I give you a take home, you'll I'll upload the assignment. You read it, you start doing it, and maybe you're given 2 periods, 2 weeks maybe, and in 2 weeks, within that 2 weeks, you should have uploaded your concept paper, which I then download and mark.
Okay, thank you. And maybe to seek more clarity on the two documents that you talked about. You said to read, understand the methods used, the questions asked, and the answers based off the that document, which I haven't looked at. But are we supposed to read beyond those or outside the documentation that you shared?
Please read beyond. What I'm presenting to you is as a basic minimum, but you're allowed to read beyond.
Okay.
Doctor, what is your program tomorrow? Because we are supposed to have you in the morning. So
yes, that tomorrow I've given you time to work on your either to get onto Moodle, to formulate your groups and start your assignment.
Okay, and then Doctor, the question of your availability.
The question of my availability. One, there's a study guide on Moodle. The study guide includes my phone numbers and my email address. So that my MTN line is on WhatsApp. So if you wish for me to meet with you either online, physical, it depends, because sometimes I'm in Kampala, but not so much. Not so much, but most of the times I'm in Fort Portal. So if it's by phone call, or if we can meet online via a Zoom link for any discussion, we can arrange for that. Is that okay?
All right, thank you. Yes, thank you so much, Doctor.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Any other question?
Yes, Doctor.
Yes,
I think I have a question. In regards to the kind of research you're going to be doing, if the kind of research I'm going to do is based towards finding a solution to a problem, but in the end it's going to result in me developing some kind of system, would that still be valid, or I need to tweak my research to go beyond actually that, which would actually mean that I would actually spend more time to analyze the system, how it's being used, and then drive a more concrete response?
Okay. Now, Arthur, I think your question is a good one. I think the more direct question is, when you're being evaluated, when your report is being evaluated, are they going to be focusing on your system or on your research? So in other words, Arthur, let us say you decide to design and implement a system. That system does not have to be designed and developed by you.
Okay.
Because this time we are not examining your programming skills.
Okay, so doctor, if this system is an answer to a research question, maybe someone did research and they identified this as a gap. So is it that I could actually avoid building the system, but maybe provide guidance on how to solve that problem without actually solving it?
Now, when you say the system is the gap, what do you mean? Is it a gap for a particular organization or is it a gap for a research community?
So for research community, if someone did research and among the issues they found, they identified this as actually a problem that needs to be solved, but they have no answer to. And then after I've gathered information, I'm like, I think let me try to come up with a solution to this problem. Does that means this doesn't count as such? Is it that this doesn't count as such?
Now, Arthur, it's very rare to say a system is an answer.
Okay.
To a gap. It's very rare. What may be, certain research may point out that maybe digitalization could help organizations, maybe let's say in healthcare or in education, be more effective. So your objective would be, let me design a digital system, implement it maybe in a healthcare education system, and determine if it actually does bring about effectiveness. But a system itself cannot be the gap. And a person may propose that a digital system may bring about ABCD. Now, for you, Arthur, your issue then is, let me implement and determine if it actually does.
Okay, so Doctor, to be more exact, for example, Wizen, are you familiar with Wizen? Work with indicators for staffing needs.
Sorry?
Wizen, are you familiar? Have you heard of Wizen?
Wizen?
Yes, please.
No, what is it? How is it spelled?
Workload indicators for staffing needs. WISN.
Let me just try and search that.
Okay, so for example, like currently there is the challenge is that the process of data capture into that tool before someone can do analysis, they need to capture data, which is prone to errors and is tedious. So there was a research that was done to find the challenges of what's limiting Wizen from being implemented. And this group identified that one of the challenges was that it's time consuming and they need to automate that process of data capture. So if I am to go into research on how to automate that process of data capture, does that count as research?
No, because how to automate is known.
Okay.
What is unknown is if you automate, does it actually bring about the improvement they're talking about?
Oh, okay. Will it actually result to adoption of that?
Exactly. That if you automate, does it actually bring about adoption? Is there improved perceived usefulness and ease of use?
Doctor, I'm insisting that research will take a very long time beyond the 2 years of the course.
No. It doesn't.
Okay.
Number one, let us say you want to do it. You get someone else to automate for you. Not you.
Okay.
You get someone else to automate for you. They automate. You implement. After you implement, okay?
Okay.
The point is here, your research, we're not going to be looking at your system development life cycle. No. They want to look at your research method, not your system development method, your research method. The system is designed, it is implemented. After it is implemented, you evaluate. Okay? You evaluate. And by evaluation, now, even for you, let us say it is going to a large group of people. For me, if I were you, I would simply go to theoretical framework. I use either term and something else, the adoption theories, ICT adoption theories. I use those as my theoretical framework, design a questionnaire survey, send it to people who have implemented the automated Wizen and begin to ask, perceived questions to determine perceived ease of use, perceived usefulness. And then I give back from the survey, not even question, not even interviews, from the survey, what people feel about it now that it's automated. Simple. And if I have a large good group of respondents who are accessible, that question will be answered in no time.
Oh, thank you, Doctor.
You're welcome.
Doctor, I have a question.
Yes, David.
Regarding the same. Should we expect research without a system?
Research without?
Building a system.
Research without building a system.
Yes.
Pardon? Should you expect research without building a system?
Should that will that research be considered complete?
Without building a system? Unfortunately, you are expected to build a system. Unfortunately, you are expected. According to the UMU faculty expectations. But I wouldn't say that is strictly the IS worldwide view, but in UMU, they expect you to build a system. The only thing they expect you to do is move beyond the system.
I'm understanding you well, it is that by the time I defend my research, the system has put to use. If it is a system, it has been put to use, and then it has been assessed how its performance to answer a question. Right?
Yes. Any other question?
Then, Doctor.
Yes, David.
How long is the research period?
Sorry?
How long is the research period?
I think I'm not sure what the schedule is, but I think most of the time they begin to assign you a supervisor after the research module. I think, I'm not sure, I think. Teresa, do you have a question?
I do.
Yes, please go ahead.
I do have a question. Okay, good evening, members.
Good evening.
Now, I have been noting, I joined a little bit late, but I'd like to ask a few things. Based on your guidance today, I'm wondering if you've talked about groups, and I'm wondering what part of the research is going to be done as a group and which one is meant to be done as an individual.
Okay.
That's my first question. Then secondly, I want to know, we have two different programs running. We have the information systems and the ICT management.
Yes.
So I also want to be guided on the approach for both, because I think ours may not be geared towards the system, the development and all.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Teresa, thank you for those questions. One, the study guide indicates how many group assignments you have and how many individual that you have. Specifically, the individual is a quiz, and then the other two are group. Then your final assessment is individual. So the study guide indicates. The second question was about what are the perspective, because most of the questions have been on systems. Yeah. Now, if you look at the two articles that have uploaded, the two sets of articles, they are those which are for ICT, they are those which are for IS. So those already give you a perspective of the types of research for both. Okay. Whatever the case, an artifact is expected by both. So when I say artifact, an artifact is a tool, any tool. So IS, we are talking about systems. ICT, we're talking about frameworks, we're talking about models, those basically which help in governance and management. So the sets of articles for ICT give a perspective, and the sets of articles for IS give also another perspective to those particular programs or examples. Teresa, have I answered your question?
You have,
Yeah. So in my case, what I've seen with ICT, there are students who have validated frameworks or models. There are those who have built frameworks or models. There are those who have validated existing models and added new knowledge on existing models or frameworks. Any other question?
Doctor, good evening. This is Winnie once again.
Yes, Winnie.
I'll be biasing myself if I don't ask this.
Okay.
I opted to do ICT. Basing on my own facts, but I need you to guide me probably. I thought it was more of management.
Yes. Yes, please.
And so I left the MIS.
Yes.
Because I the administrative part of it.
Yes.
Now I am just wondering, as an administrator, I will come up, of course, with the research, and like you're pointing it out, I must come up and either develop a system or modify it.
No, for ICT, I said a framework or a model.
Oh. Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah.
You've answered me already, Mama.
Okay. Any other question or comment? But Winfred points out I think an important perspective. The ICT program is looking at training ICT managers, ICT management, ICT governance, ICT directors, those who are the bridge between an organization's management and the ICT department, to align ICT to the organization's goals and objectives. That's the purpose of that program. Any other question or comment?
Doctor, comment about IS.
I comment about IS. I think this one creates a highly specialized individual, technical individual, I think he's the highly specialized technical individual. There is a management perspective because I know there are specific modules which were introduced to not just hone or specialize in the field of IS, but also give you a management perspective. But this one is a highly specialized individual in the field of IS. That is one. Whereas when you look at the ICT individual is more or less picking skills in managing or governing the ICT department. That was the objective. But the IS one, I would say it's a highly specialized individual on the technical side. I hope I've answered your
Doctor,
question. Yes, please.
Because you are our first facilitator, allow me to ask a question. You mentioned about specializing, that you specialize in software development.
Myself, yes.
Can you please throw more light on that, because we have not got a chance to be.
No. I was referring to me as an individual for my master's program. I did a master's program in computing and specialized in software development, software engineering. That was me as an individual. It wasn't at UMU. To be more specific, it wasn't at UMU. David, I don't know if I've answered your question.
Yes, it's well answered. Thank you.
Okay. Do you have any other question or comment?
Yes, madam. This is Benson Msingz once again.
Yes, please.
And for me, I come to appreciate you, Doctor, for introducing us to these concepts and actually giving us a feel of what is expected of us and the journey we are starting. I don't have much, just to appreciate, and glad that you are in Fort Potro, where I also stay.
Oh, that's good.
And
so you have greater access to me, eh?
I think I'm very happy about that.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you too so much, Benson. Thank you for
Right.
appreciating.
Okay.
So if we have no other question or comment, maybe yes, please. Yes, Dennis.
Yes, as we are here on in this class, we have various experiences and backgrounds, and I have a question.
Yes, please.
There is some of us that have some good knowledge, about these concepts. Probably some have been in the academia sector. I assume others have been in the technical side. So my question to you is, as someone who has seen students pass your hands and succeed in the field like this,
yes,
what is it that you feel we need to know if we are to pass, and also gain knowledge that will make us valuable in the world of work? And what is it that we must do on your side to make sure that we prepare ourselves better and we pass this exam, when time comes? Thank you.
I think for me, especially for this module, is to easen your work, to easen especially even I'm not just thinking of the exam, but your dissertation. The most important thing is identification of a research problem from literature. Of course, looking at the perspective of what is expected of you in your different programs. Identification of a research problem. Formulation of your research objectives, and identification of an appropriate research method. I think those three are the most important.
Dr. Come again, I'm noting.
One, identification of a research problem from literature. So clearly identifying where is the research gap? What is the question that needs to be answered? Then very good formulation of a research objective, and the subsequent research specific objectives. Then 3, identification of appropriate research method, which you can defend. This is the appropriate research method to answer. For those who are going to focus on mostly qualitative research, also identification of an appropriate theoretical framework, the framework that is going to guide you. Whether it is qualitative or quantitative, a theoretical framework is necessary. That theory that is going to guide you as you seek answers to your question. So those are the 4 things I would point out. research problem, research objective, research method, theoretical framework.
Doctor.
Yes, please.
So I don't know whether I've asked the question very early, but I seem to get confused when I hear the word theoretical framework. I don't know whether I should ask you to elaborate, which I'm doing, before I maybe go digging down to understand what it is. By example, by the way.
Now, there are two things we're going to meet: a theoretical framework and conceptual framework. In either case, you still need the theory, because even to come up with a conceptual framework, you need a theory that guides you. What is that theory? Okay. If we ask ourselves, what is a theory? In essence, what is a theory? What would you say is a theory?
Like maybe a fact behind something.
It could be a fact. Here I'm seeing a supposition or a system of ideas intended to explain something. So I gave an example. I think I think it was to Arthur about term this ICT adoption theories. One of them is term technology adoption model. So this one puts forward certain suppositions. It says someone will adopt a system if they, one, perceive it useful, two, perceive it to be easy to use. Those two principles, they stand on those two principles. There are other ICT adoption models and theories. So if I came from that perspective, and I gave Arthur, who gave the example that within they said if it's automated, it will be easy adopted. So Arthur could implement a system and say, I'm going to use as my theoretical framework to determine if now within is easy to use. I'm going to use term. And from term, if I'm going to make term, my term and maybe another one as my theoretical framework, I'm going to develop what somebody said, presuppositions, some assumptions, or predictions. That if, without even waiting for a long time, I'm going to say, if I evaluate and I find majority of the users find it easy to use and useful, then we can comfortably say automation does bring about greater adoption. I put those hypotheses. So now the theoretical framework became term, maybe, and another. If I decide to choose another one, it can be term alone. I can use one or two ICT adoption models, which give me presuppositions for making a prediction. So even where Arthur said, where others were saying that it will take a long time, no, I can put up a system. I give people maybe a month to use it, and then I come and do a survey amongst those ones. Just I design a survey questionnaire based on those principles, ideas that term presupposes or term proposes. And I ask questions like, oh, when I'm using this system, I find it easy to report. I find it easy to do this. It's not hard for me. I don't need to ask anyone, things like that. So they point to ease of use and usefulness. And then from that, I measure, I take count and I say, out of these, the majority were leaning towards this, which means this system, most likely automation, most likely brings about adoption. If the results are negative, then I say automation actually doesn't automatically bring about adoption. Have I answered your question?
Yes, I think I'll have to read even much further to understand better, but yes, I have a clue now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, even just to give you further, my theoretical framework, because remember the research, the assumption they gave, well, the propositions that the research gaps said that one, there's no rigorous evaluation to see if
Yes.
something is sustainable or not. Two is that there's no development perspective. So what did I do?
Yes.
My theoretical framework was made up of two theories. One, a theoretical model that was that could evaluate mobile applications. So I used a model called STOF, and this model proposes four domains based on which, when you evaluate, you can determine if this application is sustainable or not. Two, I used development theory, rural development theory. So I went through a list of a number of development theories, and I picked one, which was called the livelihood framework. So I used that one to identify what is of value and what is not of value to a rural user.
Yes, yes.
So that was my theoretical framework. Those two theories were the ones which guided me on how to design and evaluate. So you don't just go into evaluate based on your opinion. Okay? You're
Yes.
using a certain established theory.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, that's now clear.
Okay. I hope it's clear for everyone else. Yes, Arthur.
Well, doctor, you've mentioned theories. Are there any research you can recommend? Maybe books you can read to learn more about those theories? Because it seems like they're very important so you can actually do our research.
Now,
theories.
what I would advise, let me share my screen again, because it's not textbooks that will help you here, but it is your ability to use publications. So let me share my screen. So have you heard about Google Scholar?
Yes, doctor.
Okay, Google Scholar is your best friend. So let us say you want to look at ICT adoption theories. I come to Google Scholar, I say, look at ICT adoption theories. Theories of ICT system implementation and adoption. So this is an article published in 2011. What drives global ICT analysis and direction? Let's look at this one. Maybe it may give us, let me save here. So let me open this article. So let me reshare the screen. Okay. So this is an article we have gotten from Google Scholar, and I think it should give us a perspective of different theories on ICT adoption. So this an example is this, and let me see, it's 57 pages. So this one is already talking about term. Term is one of them. Then you have diffusion and innovation. That's another theory. So you see, I've just gotten this from Google Scholar. So you can simply type in and it points out different theories. Then, once you've done that, let me do a new share. You can go back to, is this it? Let me try to minimize this. The other one we've seen is diffusion. Let me look at it again. So you can look for term. You can look for term itself. So term, if you search for it here on Google Scholar, it gives you more articles on term itself. So here is one of them. You can download it and it tells you more about term. You can look at here user acceptance of information system. Read on this. So all these articles tell you more about term. Then the other model we saw was diffusion. Diffusion of innovation theory. So also here we see another different articles. Here's one, mobile banking adoption, application of. So all of these, in other words, what I'm pointing out to you is that Google Scholar, once you use it, once you begin to search, now just the one article has pointed us to several adoption theories. And just this one article, let me see if it is still open. No, it's not open. I'll stop sharing. Why should I say using the method of snowballing? The one article has pointed us to several adoption theories. So you go to Google Scholar and read up more on others. Now, what is the advantage of going to Google Scholar? As you're discussing your theoretical framework, okay? As you're discussing your theoretical framework in your concept paper, in your proposal, in your dissertation, you're going to reference where you've gotten information on term, on diffusion of innovation, and any other theory, adoption theory, okay? So you need to reference, and write this in your bibliography, okay? This is where Google Scholar becomes very, very helpful. Let me just reshare. So take an example. If you want to discuss several of these adoption theories that you have picked out and what each one of them represents, okay? So take an example. You may want to talk about diffusion theory, and you have pulled out this article, you've downloaded it, you're able to define diffusion of innovation theory, you're able to pull out its domains and say, I want to use this or I don't want to use this. You want to reference. What do? You come here to cite on Google Scholar. When you click on cite, I hope you can see, it shows you the different ways you can reference. You can write out your bibliography. So if we know at UMU we use Harvard, you simply come here and copy and go and paste it on in the report you're making. It already gives you the format and all that is needed. If you have something like EndNote, you can go ahead and transfer it to EndNote immediately. It's collecting for you all your bibliography. Have I answered your question on how to access? Yes. On how to access this material? First of all, you'll be accessing scholarly articles. These are scholarly articles that you can comfortably reference. There are some things which should not be referenced. For example, Wikipedia, okay, or a blog. We should be referencing only in research methods, not even just in research methods. You just now put this into your system. And if you're doing any other module, if you're going to reference, let it be a scholarly article.
Thank you
so
so
Google
much,
Scholar
Doctor.
gives you access. Sorry, apart from Winfred, is there anyone with any other question? Winfred, do you have a question? Hello?
Doctor, I request that you pardon me.
Okay.
I had forgotten the microphone on, but I am comfortable
Okay.
so far.
Okay.
Far so good.
Okay, so is there any other question? Did I answer your question? I think it was Arthur who asked.
Yes, doctor, you answered my question. Thank you so much. And also maybe to add on, so could we also use Google Scholar to identify such problem from literature?
Yes, now again, good thing I think I'm still sharing this page. Depending on the research area you want to study. So, for example, you want to look at automation and ICT adoption. You may start, you start as vague as possible. Then here you have articles which are talking about, here we have ICT adoption and organizational change and innovation training system on industrial automation systems for enhancing competitiveness, determinants of information and communication, smart home automation. You can read through and then you continue narrowing down further. Look for what is exactly in line with what you want. You start from here. So your topic may start as wide as possible and then you continue narrowing down to a specific area. So just a heads up, research requires, remember that word re and search. It really does require you to have a foundation of strong literature review. It really does require you to have that. Have I answered your question?
Yes, doctor, but you're putting emphasis on strong literature review. That means that the scope of the research you're going to be doing will not be towards philosophical in a way. It's going to be towards something we can actually narrow down to and something that has been.
Exactly. We mostly here we do empirical research. That's the word I was looking for, empirical research.
Thank you, doctor.
You're welcome. Do we have any other question? Do we have any other question?